Cleopatra was the queen of Egypt for 18 years, and she left a lot of mysteries, legends, and secrets. In particular, her contemporaries told a lot about the incredible loveliness and power of the woman. That's why the most amazing quirks of Cleopatra even today excite the minds not only of historians, but also just fans of this factually great woman. In this video, we will tell about certain things that many people do not know. The mistress of Caesar and Marcus Antonius. Having conquered by her glorious charm to renowned Roman rulers, Cleopatra saved her native Egypt from the influence of Rome for more than 20 years. The queen gave herself to Caesar in a truly unique way. She ordered herself to be rolled up in blankets, tied up, and brought to the Roman emperor as a sign that Cleopatra from that moment belongs entirely to Julius. Besides, the tricks of the queen for the sake of conquering Marcus Antonius amazed contemporaries so much that even the great Plutarch devoted to this topic more than one page, to put it in modern terminology, his memoirs. Cleopatra is pretending to be madly in love with Antonius and, to exhaust herself, eats hardly anything. When Antonius enters, her eyes light up. When he comes out, the queen's eyes darken and cloud over. She makes every effort to ensure that he sees her crying more often, but immediately wipes these tears away, hiding them as if wishing to hide them from Marcus Antonius. Luxury lover. Some believed that Cleopatra possessed a philosopher's stone and could turn lead into gold. There is no way how in modern times we can explain, for example, the rich gifts she gave to the guests at feasts in honor of Marcus Antonius. The most important queen immediately gave an embroidered palanquin with slaves who carried it, and to the guests of lesser status, purebred horses in a golden harness. There, where Cleopatra could count on money, there she did not hesitate to plunder temples and tombs. There was no place so sacred that she did not deprive it of its ornaments, no altar from which she would not remove everything, only to satiate her illicit selfishness. Some of the contemporaries asserted that it was Cleopatra who ordered the looting of Alexander the Great's tomb in order to refill the badly decayed treasury. A specialist in cosmetology. Cleopatra was quite seriously engaged in the study of medical herbs, making all kinds of brews and ointments capable of giving youthful appearance or relieving various ailments. For example, Cleopatra helped her lover Caesar to treat hair loss. Generally speaking, if the Romans had not discredited the image of the queen, Cleopatra might now be better known as the originator of many cosmetic procedures, and apart from that, even some scientific discoveries. Let us tell you that she made a tremendous contribution to the development of the library of a very bustling city of Alexandria, which was then burned. Cleopatra is attributed the invention of waxing as well as pain relievers, ointments to heal wounds and bruises. Also, the Egyptians did not just paint their eyes for no reason. And by the way, when we talk about ancient Egyptians, we sometimes think of paint around their eyes. It was also Cleopatra's invention, made on the basis of lead oxide. The paint had antimicrobial properties, which greatly helped to avoid infectious eye diseases. Cleopatra also invented skin lightening agents and authored books on philosophy, units of measurement, and the monetary, specifically coin, system. Some historians firmly believe that Cleopatra built a real cosmetic factory where they produced a variety of perfumes and ointments, and the factory itself quite successfully operated as analog of the modern beauty salon, where wealthy Egyptian women underwent a variety of complexes of rejuvenating and relaxing procedures. And it's not all when we talk about Cleopatra. The queen also spoke all of Egypt's neighbors' native languages and could instantly switch from, let's say, Latin to Hebrew, for example. Contemporaries assured that the queen spoke as many as 9 foreign languages, which makes her a true polyglot. Inventor of poisons. Cleopatra spent considerable amount of time developing and studying all kinds of poisons, which were common and not common back then. Although again, the question of poisons is not so one-sided. Some historians claim that the queen was actively searching for various recipes of painkillers or medicines, and poisons became a sort of side field, which, needless to say, was actively tested on either criminals or animals. Plutarch wrote about this enthusiasm of the queen as follows: Cleopatra collected all kinds of deadly herbs and poisons and, wishing to know how painless each of them was, tested them on criminals who were kept in custody awaiting execution. Having convinced that strong poisons bring death and pains and weaker ones do not possess desirable speed of action, she has begun experiments on animals which were strung or let one on another in her presence. Self-assertion. You might think that this word may not accurately describe some of the queen's actions, but it is difficult to call them otherwise. Cleopatra literally declared that she was the earthly incarnation of the goddess Isis, who had come to earth to give happiness and prosperity to her people. To look younger, the queen used rather strange ways of rejuvenation. For instance, she took regular baths in fermented donkey or goat milk. The woman used dried crocodile excrement as a facial aid. As a perfect example of self-assertion, Cleopatra argued with Marcus Antonius that she could eat up 10 million sesterces, which is equivalent to about $20 million in one meal. During dinner, the queen asked for a glass of vinegar, in which she dropped a pearl from her earring. She waited when it would finally dissolve, and afterwards Cleopatra calmly drank a cocktail worth 10 million. Pliny the Elder or Gaius Plinius Secundus wrote that the pearl drunken controversy was special and the largest in all history, a remarkable and truly unique work of nature. Drinking club. According to the recollections of modern people, Cleopatra, perhaps for the first time in human history, created a club for the lovers of the wine god Dionysus. In modern way of saying it, it was an elite pub for the wealthy nobility. During the meetings of the club, fabulous money for those times were wasted, and then sometimes the club members in revealing clothes, and even time to time without them, went for a walk in the night of Alexandria, in search of adventures and entertainment. Cleopatra, according to the evidence of contemporaries, had a weakness for drinking, and probably suffered from alcoholism by modern criteria. Perhaps alcohol was also a way to have fun and forget oneself and problems of this world, because in her environment, Cleopatra had always had a rare life-loving nature, especially if we would take into consideration that life back then was pretty harsh, and maybe her really unenviable fate played a role here. After all, the Romans themselves called the queen Nile Snake and frankly hated and feared her mostly because of the influence she had on the Roman emperors. She enjoyed life and embraced all its joys with simplicity. Her frantic heart rushed from happiness to sadness, from comedy to tragedy, with disconcerting ease. And in her fragile hands she held the complex fabric of circumstances, like a cloak woven of shadows and light. Roman myths. The Romans, as already mentioned, feared Cleopatra, especially since they were firmly convinced that the purity of Rome could be destroyed by the promiscuity of the East, one of the most promiscuous queens of modern times. This sentence could be heard in Latin as well as other tongues around Roman Empire. The Roman propaganda made the woman look like one of the most promiscuous queens of all times. The Roman poet Marcus Annaeus Lucanus, or simply Lucan, wrote of Cleopatra as follows: Rome's debauched death, as a Spartan with a ruinous appearance, she threw Ilion into ashes and damaged the houses of Argos. So, Cleopatra has now inflamed Hesperian lusts. Oh, how that the whole world might not be taken by a foreign woman in her hands. In truth, many believe that there were only two men in the queen's life. Her first marriage to her underage brother, who was not even 8 years old, cannot be considered an intimate experience, and both of these men are the two most famous Romans, Caesar and Marcus Antonius. Everything else is just an insinuation of Roman contemporaries who, as already mentioned, were outright afraid of Cleopatra. The only thing that was honestly and boldly said about Cleopatra was her looks. In essence, Cleopatra had no great natural external features, but she was absolutely striking for her charm, intelligence, and politeness. Even Plutarch, who was always blubbering in the queen's direction, had to admit it. The beauty of this woman was not what is called incomparable and striking at first sight, but her treatment of people was distinguished by an irresistible charm, and therefore her face, combined with a rare conviction of speech, with a huge charm, permeating every word, every movement, firmly imprinted in the soul. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Flip Side of History and also leave a like.